The broken treaty. The transmission crackled through space, reaching Earth's communication arrays with the weight of impending doom. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood in the center of the Nexus Peace Station, her brown eyes steady despite the plasma rifles aimed at her chest. The ornate chamber around her, built to symbolize galactic unity, now served as her execution ground. "This is Ambassador Elena Vasquez of the Terran Federation." She spoke into her communicator, her voice calm despite the circumstances. "I am transmitting my final report to Earth Command. The Cytherian Empire has rejected all peace negotiations. They consider humanity a virus to be eliminated, not a species to be respected." High Commander Vexthal stepped forward, his reptilian features twisted in contempt. The Cytherian stood nearly 8 feet tall, his scales shimmering with bioluminescent patterns that indicated his rank. "Your species disgusts us, human. You spread across the galaxy like a plague, claiming worlds that belong to superior races." Elena raised her chin defiantly. "We came in peace. We offered trade, knowledge, cooperation. What we got was slavery and genocide of innocent worlds under your so-called protection." "You discovered too much," Vexthal hissed. "The evidence you gathered about our operations on Solani Prime and the other worlds cannot reach your pathetic homeworld." Elena smiled grimly. "Too late. The data streams are already transmitted. Earth knows what you've done to the Zilani, the Morthek, and dozens of other species. You've enslaved entire civilizations, harvested their resources, and called it protection." The Cytherian commander's eyes blazed with fury. "Then you die for nothing, human." The plasma bolt struck Elena's center mass, and her body crumpled to the station's polished floor. But her communicator continued broadcasting, sending the final moments across the void to a world that would not forget. 3 days later, Admiral Marcus Torres stood in the war room of Earth's Luna Command, his weathered face carved from stone. Elena had been his sister, but personal grief would have to wait. Around the circular table sat Earth's finest military minds, their faces grim as they reviewed the transmission. "The Cytherians made a mistake," Torres said, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had fought in the colonial wars. "They thought killing Elena would silence us. Instead, they just gave us a reason to show them what humans do when pushed too far." General Patricia Wong leaned forward. "Admiral, our fleets are strong, but the Cytherian Empire spans 40 systems. They have technology we're still trying to understand. This isn't a fight we can win through conventional means." Torres turned to the massive display showing star charts. Red markers indicated Cytherian territory, a sprawling empire that had dominated this sector for 3 centuries. "Then we don't fight conventionally. We do what humans do best. We adapt, we improvise, and we never give up." He pointed to a blue marker on the edge of Cytherian space. "Captain Sarah Chen is already en route aboard the UES Retribution. Her mission is reconnaissance, but I know Chen. She'll find a way to hit them where it hurts." Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution, watching the stars streak past as they dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Arcturus system. The ship was Earth's most advanced warship, a sleek predator bristling with railguns, plasma cannons, and experimental weapons that most alien species couldn't even comprehend. "Captain," called Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison from the sensor station, picking up multiple contacts. "Cytherian patrol fleet, 6 vessels. They're already moving to intercept." Chen studied the tactical display. The Cytherian ships were larger, more heavily armored, but they moved with the arrogance of a species that had never faced real resistance. "They expect us to run," she said quietly. "Let's disappoint them." The first Cytherian vessel opened fire, sending bolts of superheated plasma across space. The Retribution's shields flared but held, while Chen ordered a response that would echo across the galaxy. "Target their lead ship. Full spread of quantum torpedoes. Show them what human engineering can do." The torpedoes streaked through space, their quantum warheads destabilizing matter at the molecular level. The Cytherian flagship simply ceased to exist, leaving only expanding gazes and stunned silence on the remaining ship's communication channels. "This is impossible," came a transmission from the Cytherian fleet commander. "No primitive species possesses such weapons." Chen opened a channel. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Terran Federation. We're not as primitive as you thought. Consider this a message from Earth. We don't forgive, and we don't forget." The battle was brief but decisive. Human tactics, developed through centuries of warfare against their own species, proved devastatingly effective against aliens who had grown complacent through easy victories. When the last Cytherian ship limped away, trailing atmosphere and debris, Chen ordered a course for the nearest inhabited system. The Zelani homeworld of Zelani Prime was a beautiful world of crystal cities and floating gardens, but the signs of Cytherian occupation were everywhere. Orbital platforms bristled with weapons, and massive harvesting ships stripped resources from the planet's surface. The Zelani themselves, a graceful species with translucent skin and large, multifaceted eyes, lived under strict martial law. The UES Retribution remained cloaked in the system's asteroid field, while Chen studied the situation. That's when the unexpected transmission came through on an encrypted channel that should have been impossible for aliens to access. "Human vessel, this is Resistance Leader Zektar of the Zelani Liberation Front. Your ambassador Elena shared this frequency with us before her death. We need to talk." The meeting took place on a small moon, far from Cytherian sensors. Zektar was smaller than most of his species, but his eyes burned with determination. With him came representatives from a dozen other species, all slaves of the Cytherian Empire. "Your Elena was brave," Zektar said, his voice carrying harmonics that human ears could barely detect. "She gathered evidence of our enslavement, the harvesting of our young for their neural networks, the strip mining of our worlds. She promised Earth would help us." Chen studied the alien faces around her. Each species had been conquered, enslaved, and systematically destroyed by the Cytherians. "Why trust us? Humanity is new to this sector. We don't have the power to fight an empire." A Morthic warrior, his rocky hide scarred from decades of forced labor, spoke up. "Because you are the first species to make the Cytherians bleed. In 300 years, no one has destroyed their ships and lived to tell about it." Zektar activated a holographic display showing the true extent of the Cytherian Empire. "They are not as strong as they appear. Most of their fleet consists of ships crewed by slaves. Their ground forces are mostly conquered species fighting for their families' lives. The Cytherians themselves number only in the millions, but they control billions through fear and brutality." Chen saw the opportunity immediately. "You're talking about a revolution. We are talking about freedom," Zektar replied. "But we need a spark, something to show the enslaved worlds that the Cytherians can be defeated." Chen smiled, thinking of Elena's sacrifice and the data she had died to protect. "Leave that to us. Humans specialize in lighting sparks." The plan they developed was audacious even by human standards. While the Retribution created diversions across multiple systems, drawing Cytherian forces away from their core worlds, small teams of humans would infiltrate key installations with the help of local resistance movements. Ken's first target was a Cytherian neural processing facility on Mordane VI, where captured Zelani were being used as living computers. The facility was considered impregnable, protected by energy shields and automated defenses that had never been breached. The humans arrived in captured Cytherian shuttles, their biosignatures masked by stolen technology. But it was human ingenuity that got them inside. Chen's team used a combination of electromagnetic pulse grenades and good old-fashioned explosives to create a cascade failure in the facility's systems. The Cytherian guards were trained to fight other aliens who relied on energy weapons and conventional tactics. They were not prepared for humans who used chemical explosives, kinetic weapons, and tactics that seemed to border on insanity. Chen's team moved through the facility like a force of nature, freeing hundreds of Zelani captives and destroying millions of credits worth of mineral harvesting equipment. But the real prize was the facility's database. The files they recovered revealed the full scope of the Cytherian Empire's crimes: genocide, slavery, and systematic destruction of entire civilizations. More importantly, they revealed the Empire's weakness: their reliance on fear and their small numbers of actual Cytherian personnel. As the Retribution raced away from Mordain VII with their rescued passengers, Shen received a priority transmission from Admiral Torres. "Sarah, the entire galaxy is watching. Word of the Mordain raid has spread to every enslaved world. The Cytherians are pulling back their fleets to protect their core systems." Chen looked at Zektar, who was helping to treat the rescued Zilani. "Admiral, we've got allies now. Real allies who are ready to fight. This isn't just about avenging Elena anymore. It's about freeing half the galaxy." Torres's image smiled grimly. "Then finish what your sister started, Captain. Show them what happens when you underestimate humanity." As the Retribution jumped to hyperspace, heading toward the heart of the Cytherian Empire, Chen knew there was no turning back. Earth had been dismissed as a primitive species, a minor irritation to be dealt with quickly. Instead, they had become the catalyst for the largest uprising in galactic history. The war was just beginning, but for the first time in centuries, the enslaved species of the galaxy had hope. And sometimes, hope was the most dangerous weapon of all. Fire and redemption. The Cytherian homeworld of Cythera hung like a malevolent jewel in space, its surface covered in towering spires and orbital platforms that spoke of ancient power and absolute control. For 300 years, no enemy fleet had approached this world and survived. Today, that would change. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution, but she was no longer alone. Around her flagship flew vessels from 24 liberated worlds, Zilani crystal ships that bent light around them, Morthak heavy cruisers built from living rock, and sleek Valdoran interceptors that moved like silver ghosts through space. It was the largest Alliance fleet assembled in galactic history, and at its heart flew the ships of Earth. "Status report," Chen commanded, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what they were about to attempt. "Fleet reports ready, Captain," replied Commander Morrison. 237 vessels in formation. The Cytherian Defense Fleet is moving to intercept 43 ships, but they're all flagships. No slave crews on those. Zektar, now serving as the Alliance's strategic coordinator, manipulated the holographic display. The Cytherians are desperate. They've recalled their best commanders and their most loyal crew members. This is their final stand. Chen nodded. The months since Mordain VII had seen a cascade of rebellions across Cytherian space. World after world had risen up as news of human victory spread. The empire that had seemed unshakable was crumbling. But a wounded predator was at its most dangerous. "Remember what we learned from Elena's data," Chen announced to the fleet. "The Cytherians keep their slave breeding facilities on the dark side of their moon. If we can disable their orbital platforms and break through their inner defense perimeter, we can end this nightmare forever." The battle began with a ferocity that shook space itself. Cytherian plasma cannons, weapons that could melt through the hull of any known ship, met human quantum torpedoes and alien technologies that had been combined in ways their creators never imagined. The Zilani ships used their light-bending abilities to appear in multiple locations simultaneously, confusing Cytherian targeting systems. Morthak vessels absorbed incredible damage while their bioorganic hulls regenerated, allowing them to serve as mobile shields for more fragile ships. But it was human tactics that turned the tide. Where other species fought with honor and predictable patterns, humans fought with creativity that bordered on madness. Earth's destroyers used gravity slings around the system's gas giant to achieve impossible velocities, striking Cytherian formations from unexpected angles. Human commanders coordinated multi-species attacks that exploited each race's unique abilities while covering their weaknesses. Admiral Torres, commanding from the dreadnought UES Vengeance that had arrived with Earth's main battle fleet, watched the tactical display with grim satisfaction. The Cytherians expected to fight a dozen separate rebellions. Instead, they're facing a unified force that fights like humans, but with the combined strengths of every species they've enslaved. The breakthrough came when a joint human-Valdoran strike team managed to disable the orbital defense platforms protecting the Cytherian command center. The platforms, designed to be impregnable from external attack, had never been tested against enemies who could teleport inside them using Valdoran phase technology. Chen led the final assault personally, taking the strike force down to the planet's surface while the space battle raged overhead. Their target was the Central Dominance Spire, the seat of Cytherian power for 3 centuries. The spire rose 50 kilometers into the sky, its biometallic walls pulsing with energy conduits that channeled power from enslaved minds across the galaxy. Inside, the Cytherian Supreme Council waited with their personal guard, the most fanatical warriors of their species. The battle through the spire was unlike anything in human military history. Cytherian defenders used weapons that attacked the mind as well as the body, illusions that could drive soldiers insane, and biomechanical constructs that adapted to each weapon used against them. But Chen's team included members of every liberated species, each contributing abilities the Cytherians had never faced in combination. Zeleni troops could see through the illusions, their multifaceted eyes perceiving spectrums of light that revealed truth from deception. Morthek warriors proved immune to psychic attacks, their stone-like neural structure too alien for Cytherian mind weapons to affect. Human soldiers provided the tactical flexibility and stubborn refusal to accept defeat that held the team together when everything seemed hopeless. At the spire's apex, they found the truth that Elena had died to reveal. The Cytherian Supreme Council consisted of only 12 individuals, ancient beings kept alive by technology stolen from 100 conquered worlds. They were not gods, not invincible overlords. They were parasites who had grown fat on the suffering of others. High Commander Vexthol, the same Cytherian who had murdered Elena, stood before his masters with his ceremonial weapons drawn. "You insects think you have won. We are eternal. We have ruled this galaxy since before your species learned to make fire." Chen stepped forward, her sidearm trained on the creature who had killed her friend's sister. "You ruled through fear, but fear only works until someone decides to fight back." The final confrontation was brief but decisive. Vexthol fought with the desperation of a species facing extinction, his bio-enhanced strength and speed making him a formidable opponent. But he faced not just a human soldier, but the representative of an alliance forged in shared suffering and mutual respect. When Vexthol fell, shot down by a weapon that combined human technology with Zelani energy-focusing crystals, the Cytherian Empire died with him. The neural networks that had enslaved billions shut down. The automated systems that had strip-mined entire worlds went silent. Across 40 star systems, the chains of slavery were broken in a single moment. In the aftermath, as rescue ships rushed to aid the liberated slave worlds and medical teams worked to heal centuries of trauma, the galaxy's survivors faced a question that would define their future. What came next? The answer came from an unexpected source. On a space station orbiting the former Cytherian homeworld, representatives from every liberated species gathered for the first Galactic Assembly. Unlike the old Empire's council chambers, this meeting place was circular, with no elevated seats or symbols of dominance. Elena Vasquez's brother, Admiral Torres, stood to address the assembly. In his hands, he held the data crystal that his sister had died to protect, complete records of every atrocity committed by the Cytherian Empire. "My sister believed that different species could work together as equals," he said, his voice carrying to every corner of the chamber. "She died for that belief, but her death became the spark that lit the fire of freedom across the galaxy." Zektar rose from his place among the Zelani delegation. "Humans taught us something we had forgotten during 3 centuries of slavery, that courage is not the absence of fear, but action in spite of fear. They showed us that even the mightiest empire can fall if its victims refuse to stay victims." The assembly that followed lasted for weeks, but its outcome was never in doubt. The Galactic Confederation that emerged was built on principles that Elena Vasquez had died defending: equality among species, mutual aid and protection, and the right of every sentient being to live free from tyranny. Captain Chen, promoted to admiral and given command of the Confederation's Joint Defense Forces, often stood on the observation deck of her flagship, watching the mixed fleets of the Alliance conduct joint training exercises. Ships from Earth flew alongside vessels from dozens of liberated worlds, their crews learning to work together as partners rather than master and slave. "Do you think Elena would be proud?" asked Zektar, who had become Chen's closest advisor and friend. Chen smiled, thinking of the woman who had sacrificed everything to protect the innocent. "I think she'd be amazed that humans and aliens could work together so well. And I think she'd be proud that her death meant something more than revenge." The galaxy was not perfect. There were other threats, other challenges to face. But for the first time in centuries, the stars held promise instead of terror. Species that had been enemies learned to be allies. Worlds that had been prisons became homes again. And at the center of it all, humanity had found its place among the stars, not as conquerors or crusaders, but as the species that refused to let evil triumph, no matter the cost. The price of peace had been paid in blood and sacrifice, but the galaxy that emerged from that payment was worth every drop spilled and every life lost. Elena Vasquez had died believing in a better future. Her sacrifice had made that future possible. In the end, that was the most human thing of all: the refusal to accept that things had to remain as they were, and the willingness to fight for what they could become.